Hello, everyone. This is Max Diriagin with my new article, or this time it's going to be a video interview related to project management. And with me today are two esteemed colleagues who combine freelancing with project management, Gisele Garbin Guerra, if that's the way you to pronounce your name, and
Sure.
Jeff Tan. Now, guys, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great, starting with Gisele.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Max, for this invitation to talk to you and to your audience. So yes, I'm Gisele Garbin-Guerra. I am currently a senior program manager at Plint, and but I've been a project manager. I have a background as a linguist, Brazilian Portuguese and English subtitler for about 30 years. And also in the dubbing side as a dubbing producer and QCer. So I also manage both dubbing and subtitling.
Excellent. Jeff?
I am Jeff Tan. I am a project manager, relatively new to this side of the fence. My background is traditionally as a subtitler for the deaf and hard of hearing, closed captioning. I also do subtitling work and templating work. I've been doing that for about 15 years freelance, coming up on 2 years as a project manager. So it's really interesting seeing this side of the workflow and understanding the imperatives and just the different pressures and anxieties on this side versus our side, which is also has its own host of factors to consider. But yeah, I don't have as much experience as Giselle with dubbing, but I'm always happy to learn more.
Great. Don't we all? Well, then, my first question will be rather basic and straightforward, and it's going to be just, most freelancers understand that PMs manage projects. They somehow connect freelancers with end clients, customers. But it's a little bit of a black box, and they don't really know exactly what goes into this role, what the workflow is like. So maybe if you could explain what it involves and what do project managers actually do? Giselle, could you tell us?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to. So basically, we are tasked with making sure that a project is fulfilled from start to end for the client. So the client will come to, for example, an LSP with a project that needs to, in our business, we work with localization, of course. So either subtitling or dubbing localization. And it is our task to ensure that we're balancing client expectations, that we are managing the resource, the linguist in this case, capacity and their needs to be able to fulfill the task. And that we're also fulfilling and meeting business KPIs, because of course we work under a certain company. So on the client side, that means first making sure we understand what the client wants, which is not always very clear, even I think to them. They might have a project, what is involved, what materials do they have. So it's always important that the PM understands, the whole localization process in our case, so we know what to ask the client in regards to their project to make sure that it starts off well. That is really important. We really want it to start off well instead of having to be backtracking, asking for things midway, which happens quite often. We, of course, need to meet capacity needs for the client. Do we have the right linguists with the quality expectations, with the language pairs, with their scheduling open to be able to fulfill these tasks? So we need to understand what the client wants in terms of quality and in terms of deadline. We sometimes need to educate the client as far as to what they need. We need to, make sure that they understand what it is they need and what we can provide and, what is expected for this whole project. And we do a lot of pushing back, of course, very professionally and, making sure everybody is in the right frame of mind as we communicate with the client. There's a lot of communication with the client. And that can also involve rate discussions, how will the billing process go. So that really all depends on what kind of setup, what kind of partnership the LSP may have with a client. Some rates may be already decided, and some rates always set, and some rates may be decided per project, per bulk of projects. So that really varies a lot. For the resource, we need to make sure that the resource that we select, or resources, many times it's several, could be a author, a QCer, a proofreader, a reviewer, several languages, several asset types, subtitling, SDH, supplementals. So different linguists have different skill sets. So we need to make sure that we match that correctly, that the linguists are available, that they have capacity, that they have all the materials they need to fulfill the task, that they understand the expectations from the client and from us. We provide training, we provide support with, other departments in the companies usually. There's usually other people in the department that are focused on support. Other people are focused on training and the learning materials. We also provide feedback, which we're super happy to provide positive feedback and kudos for our linguists. For me personally, it's something that brings me joy. And sometimes we have to provide negative feedback or constructive criticism or feedback, which, we try to do our best to provide it in a way that the linguist understands that this is for their betterment. And, but, it's hard. As a linguist, I know it's hard to receive even if the criticism is constructive. So just a little hint to keep an open mind and, take from the feedback, what you feel you need, especially to complete the task at hand. Don't stay locked into that feedback too much, but read it, learn and move on. And of course, question it if you need to. We need to, as PMs, we need to enforce the deadline, make sure that things are on track to delivery being met. Delivery is super important for project management, making sure that the client gets what they need when they expect to get it. And we are, of course, the point of contact for communication between the linguist and the client. And we advocate for the client, for the linguist whenever needed. And of course, for the client as well. We have to manage both client and linguist needs. So there's a lot of, being that, hopefully that balance between both of them. And for the business, when we, say business KPIs or key performance indicators, we make sure that we align our work with the company mission statement, with their business goals, with the strategy. So there's always a lot of conversations between the PMs and the PM team and the strategy work or the goals that the company has for the year or for a 5-year plan. That usually has to do a lot with efficiency, matched with quality, all the business fun and not so fun part.
Yeah,
So that's
wow.
PMing in a nutshell, I would say.
It's more than I knew as a freelancer when I freelanced. I didn't even think about it much, but wow. Okay, then next question is for Jeff. And the question is this. Could you please describe your day-to-day as a project manager
Sure.
from when you start at the beginning of the day and when you leave your job? Well, you don't work from our office, I imagine, but when it stops, what is it?
Sure. Sure, yeah. So first it depends on if I have a 6 a.m. meeting or not. As Max knows, some of us are based in different time zones, and so we have to align our meeting times. And so that is one of the first challenges of being part of an international company. It goes part and parcel with the work. Everybody is a global we're a global company, so we all do the best we can. But usually, I will log on and I will check our team-wide emails. We have a special communications folder, special communications inbox. I'll check that for any client-side updates, bulletins, blasts that need to go out now, anything that is super time sensitive, anything that the European team needed taken care of in American time zones, what needs to be like eyes on this all day today, that kind of stuff, because our clients are similarly global. They do not follow like, 9 to 5, like, my 9 to 5 is the middle of some people's workday, or it's the very start of somebody else's workday. So, or it's the tail end of it, and they're like, hey, this needs to get sorted out ASAP. So, always, sort of do triage right away at the first of the day. I'll spend about half an hour going through those emails just to sort of get a bird's eye view of what's going on. I'll do a quick check-in with Giselle and some of our other PMs, send out a couple quick messages, do any handoffs that are necessary. And then I will dive into my personal inbox and spend about half an hour to an hour weeding through that. Again, similarly applying triage, like what needs to get sorted out right now and what can maybe wait until after lunch. Because time management is really the name of the game when it comes to how we handle these pressing. I apologize. So sorry about that. I'm getting over a little cold right now. Um, but yeah, time management and sorting out uh what what is that old axiom, right? You can have it done fast or you can have it done well, you know. And if you want it done fast and well, we have to talk about, rates. But so usually that's most of my morning is triage, and then I'll just dive into emails. I'll send communications out to project managers. I will get any projects off the ground that we need to send out that day. I will look at our various timelines and say, okay, this project, the this proxy will be ready at this date, which means I have to run the calculations. Okay, there are this many days for this leg of work to be done, which means I need to have a linguist assigned by this date, which means considering how long it can take to find linguists, I need to have this time set aside for that. So there's a lot of sort of like backwards calculating from the target dates. And so I'll get any projects off the ground that I need to send out that day. Um, and then usually that's most of my morning. And then I will go to lunch, and then I will take care of um any replies that come in. So there's a lot of it's basically a lot it's what do they call it on the Twitters? It's an email desk job, but it's an email desk job where we're responsible for getting people the information they need to do their jobs, right? Um, when I was many years ago, I was working in IT tech support, and I always used to tell people that my greatest strength was I was techie enough to understand the IT guys, but I was normie enough to understand what people meant when they sent in a ticket, right?
Mm.
Uh, when somebody would send in an email, hey, uh, the printer in this room isn't working, you know, and it would be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna just give that to the IT, support guys because they're gonna roll their eyes and say, have you tried turning it off and on again, right? But I would sort of like do a little follow up, like, hey, is it a network connectivity issue? Are you connected to the Wi-Fi? Are you have you updated the latest firmware on the printer, that kind of stuff. So I would do a lot of like the rudimentary teasing out work there. And I feel that we do, especially Giselle and I, since we also have backgrounds as linguists, right? When a linguist emails us and has a linguistic concern talking about the complexity of a task or asking if certain resources are available, project managers like us, we know that workflow, right? We understand how valuable those resources are to linguists who are trying to do the job as best they can. So we can tease that out and sort of figure that out. And so, like, when I'm setting up a project, I'll try to include as much of that information as possible, right? Like, okay, you don't just want the deadlines. You want to know stuff like, is there a full, you know, uh, lexicon of key terms, right? Do you have any template references? Do you have any? Is this part of a series? Is there anything like what are there are certain things that we as linguists ourselves, also know are important to launching a project. And so I think that's and to be fair, all our colleagues are also eminently well trained, and they also
Mm.
know to ask these questions, and they know what kind of things are worthwhile. But ooh, I sort of meandered off topic there for a bit.
No,
Sorry, I have a
fun.
tendency to do that. Anyway, all of that is to say, my day is a lot of emailing.
Well, sounds a little stressful, at least for me. All the emailing, all the deadlines, all the constant time management. I hope you are both doing fine with this.
Yeah, we do okay. Giselle
Okay.
is should not, Giselle is I don't know how she does it. She's a machine.
You get used to it. You get used to it and you learn to prioritize. You want to help everyone out. I think part of the project manager personality is to be a helper, usually.
Mm.
You want to be able to problem solve and help linguists, especially, which are the people that we communicate the most, be able to do their job and hear them out. There's a lot of psychology in there. There's a lot of hearing rants and letting them vent and, getting from that venting anything that we can to be able to escalate to the client and say, these are the pain points that we're seeing regularly. Can you please, let's work on resolving this. Can we prevent this from happening? So there's a lot of picking out information from these communications and trying to create better workflows and smooth things out for the future. But these are usually big clients that we work with big working wheels. So it takes, there's a lot of inertia on resolving things, but we see the effort, we see the interest, at least from our main client, in getting things resolved.
This makes me think about this. Maybe sometimes you've come across this when one translator doesn't like another, like a translator and QCer, and then you have to be a relationship coach or something between them and try to help them just work together smoothly for this project to go through. Have you had that experience?
Absolutely. Feels like couples therapy a little bit. Yes. Yes. So a lot of our projects go through authoring and QC, not all, and that is decided by the client. For some clients, it's decided by the client what gets QC'd. For other clients, the LSP sometimes gets to decide, let's add another layer of QC because we want the quality at this level or at this level. So it varies. But yes, ideally for any project, the QCer and the author will communicate. While the author is working, they may check in with the QCer. What do you think of these solutions? What do you think of this concern? We feel that's it provides much better results and it gives both linguists more confidence in the work that they're doing, right? It's so good to throw off ideas. And so we always try to encourage that collaboration. Some linguists just don't prefer not to. They like working on, by themselves. I think linguists are freelancers in general, are used to working remotely on their own in their office. So that just suits them. Maybe not because they have anything against anyone, they just don't enjoy it, and that's perfectly fine. But sometimes there's an issue when let's say the QCer really wants to communicate with the author because they're trying to understand what happened, or the other way around. And then it's just they know each other maybe through other projects or past something happened between them, and one of them just refuses. We can't force it. We try in those cases to do the communication for them, and sometimes we have to edit out some wording that is not the most favorable for for collaboration between one and the other. But we try to get, both points across to each other so that at least the project itself can run smoothly. So yeah, it doesn't happen very often, I have to say. I think most linguists are very
Yeah.
professional and will get over that for the benefit of their own work as well. So yeah, I think most of the time it's good.
I think, yeah, absolutely most linguists, especially nowadays, right, are very open to hearing feedback and to communicating and collaborating with one another. There's a lot more esprit de corps, as it were, right? Uh, but if somebody prefers to just sort of like, hey, look, I know how I work, I value my privacy, and I want to just be, then we absolutely respect that, right? Like we cannot force anyone to divulge or share private info. So as Giselle said, in those circumstances, we sort of take on a more intermediary role, right? Like if somebody like I don't want my email address out there, okay, fine. We will just play telephone. And that is totally fine because we respect everyone's preferences in terms of how they would like to be communicated with.
Yeah. And on another, to add a little more on that communication between linguists, world, we let's say for one client or for several of our clients, we have forums where linguists can communicate in a private and safe, secure way. They're all under NDAs and MSAs, and it's all very secure. But we feel it works not just with that language pair, the two linguists that are working on authoring and QCing a specific asset, but linguists collaborating from different languages on that one, let's say, title. They can provide so much information one to another. One may see a cultural reference that the others might have missed and that may not be annotated on the template, or catch a typo somewhere that we can also then escalate to the client. So it is super productive, and all our linguists really, really enjoy those forums. I think it's really good for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm actually project managing a title right now. It's a pretty high profile title with based on an existing IP that has a lot of source material to work on and a lot of beautiful, linguistically rich, complex, and dense material to translate. And our translators, our linguists are in one of these forums right now, and I'm looking at the things they're discussing, and I am in because I primarily like in my freelance capacity, I am an English to English linguist, so that sense of the the translation aspect of it, right? Like the conversion and the flipping of one beautiful term in one language to another, and I see how they say, okay, well, in this language it has this connotation, but and I love seeing the way that they collaborate with each other. It's incredibly inspiring. And so from a project management perspective, we love to see that. We think when our linguists collaborate like that and are open to cross-pollination of ideas, you get the best output. You get the best, most beautiful language. But again, if people go like, I work best in a silo, I I I know how I work, totally fine. We will respect that and we will respect your privacy.
yeah, that sounds great. And then, as Giselle said, you can ask other people working in
Yes.
languages, but also working in different roles. Template creation, a translator can ask a template creator or someone else their view, and it's very interesting. It works well, but sometimes there are tensions outside of it or inside of it, and not everything in a project manager's job, work, task, time is sunshine and rainbows, and there are some pain points and issues that arise. And Giselle, I wanted to ask you about this. What kind of issues do you come across in your work? Um,
Yeah, no, I can think of a few for sure. It is, like you said, there are stresses in the job, but before jumping into it, just wanted to add, I think Jeff brought something up. I think most of our project managers and I myself, I'm always in awe of the work our linguists do, and I'm one of their biggest fans. So, and I hope that goes for yeah, for many of the project managers that your audience work with, because yeah, it really is fascinating. The care that people put into their work and the research, and yeah, I know as a linguist, your projects become your babies. So, and as a project manager as well, when we project manage, I think we also sometimes we get really attached to some projects.
We definitely get ownership, right? Like we feel a sense of ownership of like, hey, that show that I, you know,
Mm.
managed 12 languages on, here it is, and it's, yeah, you
It's
definitely feel a
getting
sense of ownership.
right,
Well,
it's getting
because
an Emmy or something. You feel so proud. It's like I project managed the subtitles for that. Yeah.
Well, because there's also a sense, right, of connecting the right person to the right task. And so not every project requires that level of care, right? Like full disclosure, right? Some projects are easier than others to work on. But for the really white glove treatment kind of projects, like we do a lot of, okay, well, this person did really well on this show in this genre, and this person has a background in this, and this person really loved the comic book there. And so we try to do our best to coordinate the most appropriate linguists for those kind of white glove projects. And so when it is a success, we really feel like, hey, this like this worked out. So I'm
Exactly.
sorry, Giselle. Yeah.
No, no, that's adding to what I was saying. Absolutely. And that sense of ownership can sometimes, now going back to the possible issues, for linguists can sometimes become a bit of an issue because a linguist may pride on being, they feel like, especially because we work in one capacity at our company, we work with certain pools and just a certain pool works on some projects. Um, and then with other clients, there's wider pools, so it varies a little bit, and each company has their own ways of what pools they and resources they use for different clients. In this case, a linguist may feel like they're the best for any sports title that comes in, and then that sports title needs to go to another linguist because of schedules and stuff. And the linguist, you need to manage expectations with the linguist. Well, we need to, distribute, and we need to manage schedules, and we need to manage, could it be language pairs? Or, every linguist wants to work. We also want to make sure that we try to distribute and fan out the work as much as possible. Some of the jobs, as Jeff was saying, do not get manually assigned. We don't have that fine touch with them and go through like a Shark Tank process, which mostly is in some of our cases is decided by the client. In other cases, the company can decide what goes through a Shark Tank type of process and what goes through manual assignment. And we also get feedback from our linguists on that. How could that title go to Shark Tank? Anybody can pick it up, and so we have to manage those expectations as well, because we also have to do we need to take into consideration efficiency. We are, a certain number of project managers, so we can't manually assign everything because we would
Mm.
never stop.
Mm.
And even the projects that go through Shark Tank require some of our interventions as well. Linguists open up
Oh, yeah.
support tickets. They need to maybe drop a task as in they're in the middle of it because something came up in their life and now they can't meet that deadline. So even the Shark Tank ones, which seem like, oh, okay, no PM work is needed. No, they do
Or
require.
special instructions that we were not
Yes.
informed of until after. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, who picked this up? And we have to go track all that down. Yeah.
Exactly. So all those expectations, again, communication is one of our biggest, where we spend most of our time. And deadline management, I would say, is also where we spend most of our time. I think everybody in this business knows that ETAs, or the, the estimated time of when something is going to arrive, like you may get an offer for a job and say it's going to start February 2nd. I'd say there's about a 10% chance of that happening. It's, it's
Because
most,
we're
yeah,
pretty late in the workflow, right? Like the rest of production has had their go.
yeah,
So if there's any delay upstream, it just cascades down to us. And so unfortunately, it's up to us to sort of like scramble to try to make up for any proxy delays or any sort of like last minute production changes. And as Giselle said, we've all been to this rodeo before, right? We've all worn the cowboy hats, so we know how it goes. But there's a lot of like sort of like juggling to like, oh, okay, this was supposed to be here, and now things are running into each other. And so it's that multiplied by however many projects we're each managing at the time, across
Exactly.
however many linguists we're managing at the time.
Yes. So making sure they stay up to date. Yeah, sometimes some clients provide tools where the linguist has more visibility onto when a task is delayed, when the proxy is delayed, or when the template is delayed, any dependency for their own work. And other clients do not. So it varies a lot. So when the client doesn't have that, when the linguist doesn't have visibility provided directly to them, we need to do a lot of that communication, which comes with a lot of naturally complaints or okay, this is late, so now I need an extension on my deadline, or I need that task reassigned
And that
because now I
cascades
can't
out.
put it all in. Exactly. And that cascades. And the thing is, as Jeff mentioned, we are the last step basically before let's say a title launches. If we're working with streaming, let's say there's usually a launch date and it needs to be met. So if the proxy is late, okay, the proxy is late. Now the linguist is going to have to work under rush circumstances to still make launch. We are really the final part of localization for most of our projects. And that, yeah, creates a lot of issues and back and forth. Then there's also the issue of jobs that are really hard to place. Some languages are easier than other. Not going to name any languages. Don't want anybody upset. You know who you are. Just kidding. But some linguists can be more, they have the luxury of having many other clients where they can choose from, and they can step back, and take maybe their rate, luckily, and rate conversations that's a completely different podcast or however you call this, what we're doing here, Max, the rate conversations that we always need to have a lot with our clients and linguists as well.
But we
But
are
some
very
people
happy for
feel,
linguists who
oh,
have that luxury. Like, good for you.
yes, exactly. Some have that they can take time off and feel confident that they're okay, just taking so many tasks during the month or year. Um,
We never want people to feel like, oh, you have to take this job or we're not good.
yeah,
Like, you are in control of your
completely.
schedule, and we are your partners in figuring all that out, you know?
Exactly. No, absolutely. Some language pairs are more complicated, especially into English template. We need to take or English subtitles, there's the source language and the target language always, right? Some cases it could be the same if it's a SDH, let's say. But so we need to take into consideration the target language should be native level, but they also need to have knowledge of the original language, or they should as much as possible, even when there is an English template, a pivot tape template in the middle. So all those things we need to make sure that we're keeping in mind when assigning linguists to make sure that we're meeting client expectations and that they get the best quality for what they're asking. And as you had mentioned, the communication between linguists, they're upset, they're stressed, they're under tight deadlines, and so many other things that may be going on in their lives. And we have to take the communication with, understanding that they may be a little heated and it's not personal most of the time, hopefully. It's not personal. And, just try to read in the middle of the lines what they need and how we can really help. And again, not take things personally, but it does get to you. Sometimes you're in a bad day too, and you're like, okay, I can't deal with this today. It's too much. I'm stressed as well. So we try to vent between ourselves, our PM team, and like, oh, this is happening today, to get it out, and then go back to the linguist and try to be as professional as possible and try to help them out and deal with whatever we need to deal with the client or the linguist. It's hard for the linguist to understand what our capacity is, what is in our hands to help them with. So sometimes they will say, this is not working in the software, or this is not the reference material that you promised is not here. How could you do that? Now I'm stuck in the middle and I need to deliver it. And sure, we understand it's awful. It's not how we would want things to happen as well, but a lot of it is outside our hands and outside of our control. Again, we want to hear these things because we want to prevent them for the next tasks. And we want to escalate these things to the client so that they can prevent it as well. I think a lot of our project management, I think a good, let's say, project manager is one that can foresee these issues, hopefully, and, address them at the start of the project while they're reaching out to linguists. Okay, you're saying there's going to be this type of reference material. Can we see it? Can we see the quality of it? Because we know it will impact the deadline. It will impact how much effort the linguist will need to put into this task. So being able to foresee these things and communicate before the project is in full force and effect is really important. And it's something we try to do as well.
Mhm.
And Jeff mentioned, yes, meetings at the craziest hours. We worked with localization. So of course the clients and their own project managers and our linguists are all over the world. We need to have sometimes meetings at 10 p.m., 6 a.m., training sessions, very early in the morning. Thank goodness the cameras only catch us from up above.
All I
We
will
need
say is it is
the
an easy
pajamas.
day if Giselle works less than 12 hours. That is a light day for Giselle.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I try to take, I know, I do take some breaks here and there, but yes,
Do
uh,
you?
when you go from beginning to end, let's say it's about 12 hours kind of with
Yeah,
all
you are
linguists in
I
mind.
you are a machine. I do not understand.
Yeah.
You know what? I think it's also part of, I've been before becoming a project manager. I mean, I project managed in my own company, but I was a linguist for 20 years. And as a freelancer, unfortunately, you can't always afford to take time off.
Yeah.
You can't afford to take vacation, and you learn to work by projects and by
hmm
tasks. If you need to, I mean, I haven't pulled, thank goodness, an all-nighter in years, but how many all-nighters did we all pull as linguists, right? Because we need to. You need the money. You need to make sure that delivery is met. So I think that's already part of me, and I'm okay with it for now. When it gets to be too much,
And
I'll-
this is the kind of thing that I think a good project manager understands is
yes,
that our team is going to feel those pressures and anxieties, right? Like, and so it's up to us to be like, are you overcommitting or can you actually do this, right? It's okay to not be able to do something as long as you're honest and transparent
right,
with us, because our job is to sort of like set up this, like you said, right? Like a spider web, sort of like a, of like, okay, this dependency hits this dependency, hits this dependency, like, you know. So there are certain points where it's like, okay, well, if the subtitles need a little more time, they're pretty, but like if the template needs more time, that's going to cascade out to the template QC, to the, da 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 da. So if, definitely as linguists ourselves, Giselle and I both understand, like, hey, you might feel that impulse to be like, I can take this on. I promise you, we will never be mad if you say, I cannot take this on. It is total. I will never be upset with a linguist for being like, I've bitten off more than I can. I've done that myself as a linguist. I'm like, nope, I have too many projects on. I overcommitted. I'm sorry. It's terrible, but I'd rather you be upfront about that and we can work to find a solution than you work. Like, I remember there was a show I was on, God, it must have been 7 or 8 years ago now. And I was literally, I had a day job then, and I would come home, I would see my husband for about a half hour, and then I would work for another 6 to 8 hours. I would get about 2 to 4 hours of sleep, and then I would get up for my day job because I had 52 episodes of this show to get through, and it was absolutely And so I understand that linguists' impulse to be like, no, 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 I can't say no, I need this work. But I promise you, be honest with your project managers. We will not be mad if you say, I need more support, I need more time. And if the scheduling just doesn't work out, I would rather your mental and physical well-being be taken care of than you burn yourself out on a project. And I know everybody at our company feels the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Communication is key. And sometimes that there's that difficulty as well, the balance between what you can communicate to the linguist and from the linguist to the client, that transparency, and also what you need to keep private, so you need to balance that. The linguist has shared a reason as to why they can't complete. Of course, you're going to keep that private, but you need to let the client know that something is happening and the linguist can't deliver. And the other way around, the client may have a reason for this project getting delayed that, maybe is not in anyone's best interest that it gets shared with everyone, out in the open. This may make, the client not look as good, and we can, reroute the conversation so that the linguist still gets the information they need, they feel heard, and they can continue their work, but we also, need to manage that privacy on both sides. So that's also important.
Oh, so many nuances to this. Oh my God, a whole web of things, and all of them kind of are interdependent. Everything depends on everything, and you have to just be a superhero and kind of the dots. On a separate note, I would like to ask you, Jeff, about, and from your perspective, what common misconceptions freelancers have about your work? What do they get wrong often?
Sure. I mean, I think Giselle touched upon this. Oh, I'm so sorry. My Dayquil is not working as well as it should. Um, I think Giselle touched upon this earlier. We don't actually have a lot of control over so certain things like, hey, can you reopen this file? Or can you find out what this thing means? Or I'm missing this resource. A lot of the times we don't actually have the capacity to address that ourselves. And so we absolutely can and do go to the clients and try to request that those resources. But a lot of the times, due to again the aforementioned time zone differences, everybody works and our colleagues and counterparts on the client side might be in different time zones, and so if we put in the request, it might take a while for them to see it. So um, it might take time for those requests to effectively sort of percolate on up, right? Um, but we ourselves are relatively limited in terms of what we can and cannot do. And I understand this myself as well because a couple years ago I was in the exact same position and I would be like, "Hey, I need this show guide because I don't know who this character is. All of a sudden, I'm working asynchronously on episode 7 of a 23 episode show and I don't know who the heck this person is or why they're referenced. Um, and we just do our best to try to get that to you, but we don't have like a little stash where we keep everything. Like we don't have a little cubby hole where we put all of the show or movie materials. Like we're also just trying to do our best here to get everything to you in a timely manner. Um, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest misconception I think people have about what we do. Um, what would you say, Giselle?
No, I think that is yeah, I think that's the biggest one. I would also add that a lot of project managers, and I'm always amazed by what they know and learn so quickly, the ones that I work with in terms of localization, but some of them don't come from a localization background. So sometimes it's good when linguists, just a quick tip, when they're communicating to their project managers, something that they're having a difficulty with in their project, their current project, a specific file or a specific workflow, if they can provide, more information, because sometimes they may just escalate something like, oh, I don't know, the FN is not tagged in whatever. And for the localization manager, for the project manager, that might be a bit of foreign language, until they're very familiar with the workflow, or they understand the pains of that. They may understand exactly what FN is and the workflow and what it involves, but what kind of pain, why is that a pain point for the linguist? They may not be as familiar with those issues. So if you can provide more information or more details, yeah, it's not tagged and it's going to cause this problem, and I see that it's going to go on air with this, so can we please clear this up before I submit the file? So just providing a little bit more information as to why that is a problem. What are you seeing? And of course, you as a linguist, who you're working with, so you may feel, no, that's not needed. It's clear, everybody will understand. But if there's any doubt, I think the more information, the better it is for everyone. So I think that, what other misconceptions? But
Well,
yes, we do sleep. We do have a life. No, just kidding.
maybe you could give a couple of comments, not about misconceptions necessarily about project managers or management, but also generally LSP work and workflows. Anything comes to mind?
Sure. Yes, of course. And I think that, yeah, it varies a lot. There's, of course, there's the LSP or the agency, whoever's hiring you to do the linguist to do a certain task. And there's also the client. So usually the LSP is the middle person, right? Between the client and the linguist. And the linguist is working on, let's say, proprietary tool, be it the LSPs or be it the final clients. It really depends on the setup and that there is for a specific project. The linguist may suggest improvements and ideas like this is not working, and it's great because linguists work with so many different tools. That is so welcome. I think that is super useful because we can, in our case, a specific LSP, we can get information or feedback from a linguist that, hey, this is done in another tool. Could this be done in ours? And, it'll make everybody's job so much easier. So those are more than welcome. And if it is on the client tool, we do collect that information and we escalate it, or sometimes there's even feedback workflows that the linguists themselves can escalate suggestions for the final client. But we do escalate those. Again, like I said, the wheels of change are huge and take time and is not always the main priority. Usually an LSP, for example, has sprints and development goals set up for the year or more, a couple of years ahead. So it's really hard to squeeze in these tweaks, which may seem like, oh, it's just a little tweak. It can be, some of them are and can be, small things that, again, I'm not tech at all in terms of software development, so I wouldn't know, but some of them could be small things that can be done quickly, so don't stop escalating, but a lot of them may not be the main priority because, like I said, there's already a set of projects and sprints and goals for the development team. So it's not like you're not being heard. You absolutely are, and your ideas are valued. They just need to get in line to actually happen. Speaking of escalating problems, one thing we see a lot, and usually because there's many different ways to escalate an issue, and we understand the stress of having to deliver something the next day, and you sent a support ticket, and nobody has gotten back to you yet. Or somebody did and said, we're looking into it, but then it seems like they forgot about you and haven't replied. So then you send an email to your project manager and that person may be out of office. So you send it to 2 more people and you escalate it another way. That actually just adds more, that just takes away more of our time, because now we're having to close 5 different tickets, and we're having to let our colleagues know, oh, I'm already working on this issue. Are you working on it? Oh, shoot, I was already working on it. So then you have 3 different people working on one thing, and trying to close tickets everywhere, which takes away time from us to actually being able to help resolve the issue. So ideally, support tickets, of course, depends on the client and the LSP, but they usually get looked into at least 24 hours. Even quicker, but I would say at the most in 24 hours. A lot of things are already being escalated to the client, but now we need to let the client do whatever is needed to help resolve your issue. We can't keep pushing them for it. And if the client is working on it, again, this may not apply to all clients and all LSPs, but if the client is aware already and they're working on it, they will most likely extend your deadline if there's a possibility, if there's no launch date or anything pending. But that's something you can ask when you do open that first support ticket. Can you please, is it okay for me to wait and not deliver this task until I hear back from you? Just for your peace of mind. So if somebody responds to your ticket and they're looking into it, they can acknowledge that, yes, it is okay. It will be, we have some leeway, we'll extend this, or the client will extend this deadline. So try to put all your questions and concerns into the ticket. Don't take it for granted, because you don't want to be stressing over, okay, so should I just submit this thing and then they can reopen and I can fix it later, which is never the best solution. So yeah, so if you can focus it, keep it on one ticket, or if you can only have your email to reach to your PM just on that one email, that really helps us. And it will help you too, and all the other linguists who are also asking for help. Another misconception is that LSPs will all be replaced by AI, which of course is the topic of the moment more than ever. I mean, it is the thing especially I think we think in entertainment, there's gonna be AI tools that are gonna come in to help in different steps of the project, of the localization workflow. Absolutely. We may already be seeing them in many different workflows or areas. But it also becomes messy. It also takes a lot of project management. It also, especially now we're in a transition period, let's say. So there's a lot of still concern about what kind of quality, what is the output, what else needs to be added for this to be anywhere considerable as a deliverable, so the LSPs are doing, I'm sure, a lot of that research work and investigative work. But we don't see them going away anytime soon. So yeah, that is one of the things that get looked at a lot. And that all LSPs are the enemy and just want to make as much profit as they can on top of linguists. Do they exist? Absolutely. And I think there's lots of plenty. I don't know if it's enough, but there's lots of forums and websites and sites where you can find LSPs, where linguists, will escalate, these LSPs haven't paid me in 6 months. These LSPs are paying 30 cents per subtitle. You can find that information, and we think it's really important that it is out there and it creates some accountability, hopefully, because I know some LSPs do check those sites every once in a while, so hopefully they're seeing that things are not staying quiet anymore. I've even seen things on LinkedIn, calling LSPs out. And if that's the only way that, people can get what they're owed, it has to be done if they tried all communication. But I would say, I know for sure that is not all of them. Many LSPs have it in their mission to be fair to the linguists. Of course, they're business. No one is nonprofit. I don't know of any nonprofit LSPs, but there might be. So they do have to survive. It takes, like you're saying, a lot of PMs and a lot of administration, a lot of management, physical offices. So there's a cost to all that. So of course there's going to be a margin somewhere. But there are LSPs that try to keep that to the point where they can just continue working and continue employing and contracting freelancers to do the work, to just keep on existing and do the work that they know how to do best. So no, not all are gonna be just going after getting the most money as possible.
Okay.
Need to find them.
Quite a few misconceptions I see. I don't know about AI, we'll see. But yeah, I know now that not all companies are bad. Some are good. Depends. Um, Now let's shift gears and go to yet another topic, and that probably will be useful for freelancers. And that is, please give me your best advice for freelancers to ensure a smooth collaboration and just a good time working for an LSP and talking to a project manager. What would be your recommendations?
Yeah, if I'll start and then Jeff would jump in as well. I would say, well, communication is key. That's what you're going to be doing the most with the project manager. So, be, of course, professional and courteous, and but make sure that you're also getting your point across. Not in a short way, I don't mean it that way, but kind of concise, to make sure that, like we said, it's a stressful day with tons of emails. So if you can make it to the point, provide all the information at once, so we don't need to keep checking back with you. Oh, but what project are you talking about? So we don't need to. So all that information is there, so we can help you out, look into what it is that you need or what you want to share, without taking anyone's time as away from either you or us, of course, because you will also need to be answering our questions if you haven't been concise from the start. Of course, professionalism is key, not just in communication, but deadlines. Deadlines and delivery are top priority for any project manager. That is one of the things that is top for the client as well. Most of the time in localization, because either things need to go on air or streaming, there's launch dates. So that is key. And quality, of course, absolutely. So you need to deliver with quality and on time. If you have any impossibilities, if anything is stopping you from doing that, communicate. Don't be afraid to let us know that
We will
something
not
is,
be angry.
yeah, right?
We will not
Something
be
is
angry, I promise you.
due. No, we will not. We will never be. Of course, it's going to create some juggling from our part, and we'll have to deal with it and resolve it. Maybe find another linguist that can help if you can't meet a deadline. But we would rather do that than having to tell the client we're not meeting the deadline. That is the last thing we want to do.
Yeah.
And that can really put, the business at risk, the partnership with this client at risk, especially if it happens repeatedly. So that is definitely the last thing we want to do. So we would rather work it out with you and colleagues first, and than having to do that. And then feedback. It's gonna happen at some point. Hopefully it's good stuff, and we're congratulating you on something that you did, and the work, and how, not just on getting feedback on everything looked great in the file and stuff itself, but working with you. And I think LSPs, honestly, and I even say that about myself, mostly because of lack of time, but that's no excuse. We need to get better at providing that feedback, the positive feedback, because the negative feedback is going to get out there because it's needed. We need to improve. So that one is usually quick and to the point, but we need to take time to provide the positive feedback. I think as linguists, we need so much of that reassurance that we are on the right track, that even not just about quality, but about communication, that, wow, your email yesterday was perfect. It provided all the information I needed to do my job as a PM. And I was able to escalate it quickly to the client. The client understood it right away and resolved, check, done. So just even letting the linguists know that, so they know they're on the right track and they feel confident in what they're doing, is really good. But then there's the constructive criticism, making sure that you listen. You don't take it personally, but take it professionally. So it's not about you. It's not about you as a person that you chose that word, but professionally, maybe consider, this wording may be offensive or was not the best for context, whatever it is that you're getting as feedback, or can we help you with more training in timing? We see that there were lots of timing issues. So I think the feedback is also, I guess I'm noticing I'm seeing a lot of feedback for the PMs as well. And I think that's something we need to also be self-aware as project managers. Are we helping our linguists as much as needed and as much as we can? Are we setting them up to succeed in what they're doing? So, a lot of self-reflection and seeing where each one can help the other. But if we can get that help from the linguist, mostly be proactive and be flexible. Be flexible with deadlines, be flexible with yes, we said there was going to be this material, but we didn't know that that material is not available. Can you still do it? Will that be okay? How else can we help you? Keep communicating. Don't shut down if something, is not working as expected. And be proactive, I think, is like anything that you can foresee that might be an issue for the LSP or for the client. Again, you're probably the first person to look at the content in its entirety. You are the best to say, hey, there's something really, sensitive, or if this launches in Japan, there's going to be this kind of feedback or this kind of push. Are you sure? I just want to, maybe the client already has a launch. They're not going to do anything about it, but just letting us know so that we can let the client know, it goes such a long way. It really shows, you're concerned for the product, you're concerned for the viewer. The viewer in this territory is going to be really offended with this type of content or with the language that was used. Or, there's a dropout in the video. Have you noticed there's a typo in the FN that's already burnt in? We've escalated so many of those things, and the client is usually so, so appreciative because they can fix those things before they go on air. So anything that you catch that you feel might be useful like that, don't ever think, oh, somebody else is going to say it. Somebody else is going to bring it up, because they may not. It may be you're the only one seeing it, and then it's going to launch. You're the last eyes, let's say, because we are pretty much the last step before it launches. So yeah, proactive and flexible. And I think that's, I don't know, Jeff, what do
Yeah.
you?
I mean that pretty much covers all of it. I was just thinking, I was like, we obviously have access to all email threads and all conversation about a project, but I think it would also help if you write email, like, treat us like goldfish, right? Like, hey, here's a new email. It's been a day or two. Here's what I was writing you about before. Now here's where we are. Like, a sentence or two summary would be very helpful, right? Because sometimes I'm like, somebody will reply to an email and sort of like in media race out of nowhere, and then 3 days later, I'm like, what was this about? They won't even put the subject or the project in the subject line, and they'll be like, am I still working on this, or did this get resolved? And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? So treat us like goldfish sometimes. That can be helpful if you're picking something up after a couple of days. A one or two sentence like, hey, previously on da 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 da. That's the only other thing I have. But yeah, professionalism, I think. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Um, Professionalism goes a long way, right? Like, just, we all have bad days. but that goes both ways, right? Like I never take a linguist's bad day personally, but that also means sometimes, like, I mean, Giselle probably gets 4 times as many emails as I do, and I usually get anywhere from 40 to 50 emails a day based on however many sendouts I do, right? Because I'll do a sendout to 12 linguists and they'll all have questions about the sendout, and I'll do however many 5 to 10 sendouts a day based on however many projects require. And so we are very high volume and I think we're pretty good at juggling that, but stuff does slip through the cracks. And so, you know, going back to my previous thing. Goldfish, hey, remind me what was the point of this, like what was the pain point here and what were you trying to get resolved? Especially if it's like a couple of days later and you're sort of picking it up a couple of days later, or I'm picking it up a couple of days later, that is super helpful. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's all I got.
No, that's perfect. And going back to the adding information to your communications, I think, like I said, deadline management is one of our biggest, the most time consuming, where we spend most of the time. And I see a lot of communication and tickets from linguists. Well, I just need a couple of days. Couple is so subjective. So just give us a deadline. Say, could you extend this to January 25th, 5 p.m. PST? We
Yeah.
like that. We really like that. Instead of just a couple of days, or I need a few hours, or can I get some extra time? Extra time could be a day, could be a month. It's so hard. So that would just create us asking you, okay, what do you mean? Is a week enough? Is a day enough? Is 3 days enough? Because we need to have that communication with the client.
I just had a
So,
situation like that where somebody said, I just need a couple more days. And I said, okay, great. I know I have a window of this much more time based on another communication with another linguist. And so I gave this linguist that extra time. And they came back and said, oh, that's not enough. And I was like, you should have told me that when you asked,
yes,
you
yeah,
know?
It's not very
So
professional.
yeah, like, again, be precise and be concise.
exactly. And it could be a little bit of the fear of the linguist. So, oh, I'm not going to say January 30th, they're going to kill me. So I'm just going to say a couple of days and see what happens.
We
But
will
if
never be
January
mad about
30th,
that.
exactly. And if what you need is January 30th and you can't make it before that, a couple of days is not going to help.
Yeah.
So it's easier for everyone and cuts down on time of us helping you, if you're just very precise on what you need. That would help tremendously.
I would actually add another recommendation from my own, and that is to read the help articles that your LSP has for you. Please. Often they have all the information you need. You don't need to create a ticket. Just read it, use the search function, whatever it is that your client has. That would be great. But many people do not care or don't even know that those exist, unfortunately. But so we covered recommendations for freelancers. And now I would like to ask you guys, maybe Jeff, for this question to give your advice for your fellow project managers across the industry. What would you tell them to do to be great at what they do?
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm great at what I do, so I think that is but I think I always like tell people I'm linguist first, right? As a linguist myself, I know what kind of pressures and anxieties you're under, right? Like I was talking about earlier, right? I mentioned that one project I had where I was sleeping 4 hours a day because I was literally working the rest of the like all day long on other projects. Um, and I know that that kind of mindset is sadly all too common among linguists. And so to other project managers, I would just tell you, please do not think of linguists as resources. That we are people too. We are people who may have contradictory impulses. We may sort of like obfuscate or futz a little to try to like get more work for ourselves because we may need the work, or we may be like we've been mentioning, like a lot of people are scared of like, scaring off project managers. Be human and be kind in your approach to your linguists, because we're all partners here, right? Like we are a team. None of us work without the other. And so be aware that linguists may present in certain ways because they're worried about pissing you off. Am I allowed to say that? I think that's fine, right? Like,
It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. Like, linguists may not want to ruffle feathers, and it is your job as a project manager to reassure them, like, no, I'm your partner here, right? Like, I will go to bat for you on what you need if you're honest and transparent with me about it. Um, and also one thing I think a lot of people don't understand is just how much time the work actually does take, right? Like, uh, doing 30 minutes of translation a day is an incredibly like when it comes to, you know, SDH, like I can, if I push hard personally, I can probably get through like maybe 45 minutes a day ish, like an hour, and I'm pretty fast as it is, right? And it all depends on what resources we provide the linguists, right? Like, was there a template? Was there a dialogue list? Was there anything that they could go off of? We cannot, as project managers, just assume, okay, you have this task and like, the client said it should only take this long, so we're only going to, like, no, understand how much time it takes the linguists to do their work because sometimes clients don't understand that.
Mm.
Yeah, but yeah, just be human, be kind, and treat your linguists as your partners. They're not resources.
Excellent. Giselle, anything to add?
Yeah, I think just need to think of your PM and PMs, think of your linguists as allies. Both PMs and linguists are working together to problem solve something for the client. The client has this problem where they need this localized. So think of this, really remember that you're here to collaborate. And for the PMs, I think like Jeff said, be kind, put yourself in the linguist shoes whenever you can. Of course, you'll sometimes need to be strict because the client has strict requirements, so you can only do so much. But how can you communicate that in a way that can be received as best as possible? How can you reassure the linguist that maybe this is a one-off, that yes, they will need to work on the weekend where they had their kid's birthday party, or and that's the only thing that can be done right now because that's what was agreed to. But how can you communicate and understand the linguist and hear them out?
Mm.
And the linguist, the same thing with your PM. Think that if we're coming to you with, let's say, bad news, it is probably because we have already tried everything we could to adjust things. Maybe it's not, and I'm not saying you shouldn't question it. You, as a linguist, yes, you can go ahead and question your PM. But did you try this? Are you sure this cannot be done? Because, I can't miss this, or I need to do that. So keep that communication open, with, very compassionate, I think, in both ways, understanding each other's place and what really is in your hands and what isn't. And just remember that as project managers, we spend all our time problem solving, which is part of the fun of this task. I personally love initiating new tests and pilots and projects and making sure things are as set up as possible before they kick off. And I think for any project manager, I think that's also the goal should be to try to have that project as set up and with the least questions possible before it kicks off downstream. But we're also working under, stressful deadlines and stressful conditions and communications with the client.
Mm.
Because a lot of the communications we get with the client, we don't trickle down, and that's part of project management, that we do the problem solving before it goes down to the linguist, but that adds a lot of pressure. So just, you know, just a little understanding on both ways, I think just keeps communication flowing, and that's all of it in this business.
Very well said. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, I'm personally out of questions. I haven't prepared anything more. So if you have anything to add, anything else, or get it off your chest, please do it now. Giselle, Jeff, do you have anything else to add?
No, just thank you for this opportunity to talk about this side of the workflow. As you said, right, like since Giselle and I are linguists ourselves, like it is we have that dual perspective, but for me at least, like coming to this side, it's like, oh, there's a lot going on that like we linguists are not fully aware of, and a good project manager does their best to sort of tamp out all those fires before they can spread to the linguists. And so it was very nice to get this chance to sort of talk about what we do and how we're working to try to make the workflow a little easier for everybody involved.
Mm,
Absolutely. And I would just want to add, I think, I guess a segue out of this. I think linguists, naturally, as freelancers, we have always been project managers of ourselves, right? Of our own projects and of our own schedules and of our own conditions. And we communicate a lot. It's part of our job. So I think it's kind of natural for many linguists to progress. No, I wouldn't say progress like it's an up or down from any of those positions, but to switch into project management. So it's something that I think it's quite a natural career. Let's say if you want to add, you want to do something different aside from being a linguist, project management is a very natural way to go. And in my case, after being a project management, I'm now a program manager, and it's just a little bit different where I now get to oversee and help strategize some of our project management work. So it's another area that could also be interesting for them with.
interesting.
Yeah.
Career growth.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I think it's a natural shift or add-on to the things that you do. But again, yes, thank you so much, Max and Jeff. Love this conversation, and I hope it's helpful.
Great. And this, I guess, concludes the interview. Thank you for agreeing to give me your insights. And guys, have a great rest of the day.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.